Nyan Gadsby-Dolly, do solemnly I, Nyan Gadsby-Dolly, do solemnly swear that I will bear true faith and allegiance to Trinidad and Tobago and will uphold the Constitution and the law, that I will conscientiously, impartially, and to the best of my ability discharge my duties as minister and do right to all manner of people without fear or favor, affection or ill will.
All right, so during yesterday's show, we had the opportunity to catch up with the Minister of Education during her school visitations ahead of the SEA examination. Now that the exams have concluded, we have another opportunity to speak with the Minister about her journey from the campaign trail to office. So joining us this morning via Zoom is the Honorable Dr. Nyan Gadsby-Dolly, the Minister of Education and Member of Parliament for the St. Anne's East constituency. Welcome, Minister. Good morning.
Good morning, and thanks for having me on. Good morning to all of your listeners and viewers as well.
No problem. So let's go back a bit. I want to hear about the experience from the campaign trail leading up to elections night. How was that experience for you?
Well, this would have been my second campaign.
Right.
This is my second round as the MP for St. Anne's East. This was, of course, a very different vibe on the campaign. A lot of it was virtual. We had quite a lot of different creative things, innovations to do because we didn't have public meetings and the usual things that we would have. We couldn't exactly go into people's homes in the way that we would usually do to have cottage meetings and that sort of usual stuff for elections. So it was very different. We did have to plan a very robust social media output. And that gave it a very surreal feel almost, but you got that energy and vibe coming out on the campaign walks. And of course, that had to be socially distanced, and you had to ensure that people wore masks and sanitizers, which in a normal campaign, you would not do. Generally, you want to encourage as many people as you can to come together, and that had to be discouraged and managed. So it was a very different campaign, but I think it allowed us to explore a different type of connectivity that I think is very important in our new normal. And then, there was the whole recount process. And again, that was unprecedented. We've never had that going on for quite so long. And so I think 2020 has really lived up to its name, even in the elections process, because things have been very different. We've had to deal very differently with the whole process. But I think as a country, we did the best we could in the circumstances, and I think we did very well to ensure that the process was free and fair, free from fear, and that we are able now to step into our new footing as a government and as a country as we move on in this new normal.
All right, Minister, you mentioned just now that, you had to use a different level of connectivity. Now, you were sworn in this week as the Minister of Education. I assume that you're going to use some of that connectivity to deal with implementing some changes in this new ministry. But what are some of the major challenges that you wish to address on the agenda?
Well, of course, the Prime Minister laid it out very clearly on the day of swearing in when he spoke about the reform of the curriculum and what needs to happen there in terms of teaching civics and governance. And there are some other things that I think for a long time have been on the agenda, teaching of Spanish, maybe at a lower level. We've spoken, I think, as a country about deepening the involvement in sport and culture. So there's all of that to be considered. But I think the most pressing challenge that we face now would be coming from the COVID-19 pandemic and the effects of that with respect to schools and how traditional teaching and learning is done. Our children have been out of school now since March. And even as we look forward to, coming back into the school buildings, albeit with a blended approach, now we've had this situation where the Prime Minister has instituted a 28-day watch to look at the trajectory we're on. And so once again, the school children are, at that point of uncertainty. This is something that cannot be avoided. This is in an effort to make sure we are all safe and our children most importantly. So the greatest challenge that faces the Ministry of Education now would be how do we do teaching and learning in this environment? Of course, with SEA yesterday, um, quite a number of schools have been able to transcend the physical boundary and get very involved in online classes and that new type of education for our children. However, we have to look at the concept of no child being left behind,
Mm-hmm.
what that means, and the ministry has been doing some surveys and so on that would lead to the understanding of the magnitude of the disconnect between those who have access to devices, have access to connectivity and supervision in such a way as to allow them to be successful if we look at an online environment. However, there are quite a number of children, and based on the ministries, as the initial statistics I would have heard yesterday speaking to the technocrats at the ministry, it could be in the order of more than 60,000 children that do not have access to either devices or connectivity. And then, of course, supervision is another thing. And the lower down we go in the education system, then the magnitude of the problem increases with respect to supervision because younger children do need that high level of supervision in terms of ensuring that the work gets done and teaching and learning takes place. And so, would be the present challenge of the ministry. The staff, of course, have been already engaged for months in coming up with scenarios as to how we surmount that challenge. And that would be the task of myself and Minister Maurice Julian for the next 2 weeks as we really solidify and finalize with the staff of the ministry how we proceed in this new normal.
Minister, that sounds like quite the daunting task. Not going to lie to you. It sounds like it's going to be a lot of work, and I do not envy that position that you hold now. What impact? You had such a great impact on the Ministry of Community Development, Culture, and the Arts when you spent the last 5 years there. What impact do you wish to make for the next 5 years, both as Minister of Education and as MP for St. Anne's East?
Well, I think the both appointments really come together to impact where I would like to make the greatest difference, which of course would be with our young people. Over the campaign, even before that, one of the pressing concerns has been our young people who are disengaged. We do have quite a number of young people that are well engaged, that are taking full advantage of the opportunities offered by the government, which are many. You have the YTEP, you have MIC, you have the MUS programs, I think we still have the HYPE programs, you have community skills, education, training. There are many opportunities, but the fact is that there are quite a few of our young people who are not fully engaged in taking part of these activities. And there are different reasons for that. And it is very important that we get our young people involved. And in the Ministry of Education, of course, the primary and secondary education are large parts of it, and the tertiary sector. However, the YTEP and so are under this ministry, and the advantages that they can offer the young people, I think, are very important to engage them with and to expose them to. And that is exactly the thrust I would like to focus on in St. Anne's East. I would have done some of that, quite a lot of that in my last 5 years, instituting competitions with the young people, pairing them with NALIS, and I want to thank NALIS for their cooperation in this regard. You know, so we had poetry competitions, we had spelling bees as a routine part of our yearly activity within St. Anne's East. And of course, I would like that to continue. The format of it now with the COVID challenge, I know that's going to take some creativity. But that partnership of the Member of Parliament's office with the schools in the constituency is something that I worked very hard to forge. And I want to thank the principals in the constituency. They have been very receptive to our partnerships and so on, which would influence our young people in terms of exposing them to the Member of Parliament's office, what that office does, and also to opportunities for greater literacy and the experience of taking advantage of opportunities that are offered. Of course, there are many young people, as I said, in the constituency who are doing just that at the post-secondary level. However, there are quite a number of young people that are not doing that. And the focus of this 5 years would be to reach out to them and to ensure that in whatever way they get that level of support, whether it is in terms of advice, exposure, to be able to find their space within the local context of taking advantage of opportunities. And at the Ministry of Education, of course, the whole issue of allowing our young people to progress and, setting the stage and facilitating that process, of course, will be the most important thing. So as we set policy and as we ensure that the divisions of the ministry are doing all that they are needing to do to set the stage for our young people to succeed and for a tertiary sector to continue that lifelong learning thrust, that, of course, would be what I would want to ensure happens at the ministry and, of course, within my constituency.
All right, thank you very much, Minister. I want to just, as I have your ear here, I want to throw in that, with the civics and all that stuff that the Prime Minister, suggested that we put into the schools. I also want to throw in financial literacy, because I think that that's something that we need to start learning from very young so that we can all benefit from it and understand how the country works hand in hand with financial literacy.
You wouldn't imagine that is, a lot of people send you advice once you assume certain positions. They would send, tidbits and so on, which are all appreciated because it all goes into the pot of looking at what you have to do as, a representative of the government and as you formulate policy. And what you said there is one of the recurring things that people have been sending: financial literacy, ensuring that our young people understand from a very tender age the importance of entrepreneurship. All of that is has been rolling in as comments that people have been sending, because I think we as a people understand what we want to see and how we want our young people to be engaged. And the Prime Minister put it the exact right way when he said that we want education for citizenship. We want to produce citizens that are disciplined, tolerant, and productive. That is exactly what we're looking at. It's not, education should not be to an exam. Education has to be for life and for living. And, so that's where teamwork comes in. And, some of the things that we hate maybe as students, but it's important because it's actually how we live. And when we come out of the school system and that school bubble, how have we prepared our young people to live and to really contribute as productive citizens to our society? A country really can only progress if we have citizens that are of a particular mindset. And so we really have to push patriotism, the understanding of the wide and broad meaning of what that is. And we have to push financial literacy. We have to push the understanding of governance so that more of our young people consider, a life of public service in the right ways. And so yes, your point is well taken. That is definitely part of what needs to be added to the pot in terms of our education of our young citizens.
Well, I want to thank you very much for your time this morning, Minister. I am going to be looking forward to checking in with you every so often along this 5-year journey that you've just started, and you hit the ground running already, so congratulations. And of course, we'll be checking in with you again. That was the Honorable...
Thank you so very much.
No problem. That was the Honorable Dr. Nyan Gadsby-Dolly, Minister of Education and Member of Parliament for the St. Anne's East constituency. And what's the beautiful thing about doing these interviews is that 4 years down the road, we can check back and see exactly what has been accomplished and what still needs to be accomplished as we go forward. So thank you very much, Minister. I look forward to the input that you're going to have, and it's going to be fantastic. I hope so, at least, because all we can do is hope at this point that, all the things come off the ground and everything works the way it should.